It's really, there are fires burning 12 miles away.
Oh my goodness.
Gosh.
So, I mean, safety-wise, how does it look like?
Not very good, actually. People, as I said, 12 miles away, people have been evacuated. So we have to be ready to leave, but we don't quite know where to go because we are surrounded by fires.
Wow. So it's going to get, it's expected to get worse towards the end of the month, or?
No, it's supposed to get better by
Okay,
Tuesday if it rains.
Okay.
So you all stay safe. Thank you for doing this. I'll mute myself.
Okay, good to talk to you. Hey, Alex, good to see you.
Hello, everyone. Hello, Serge.
Yeah, good to see you.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
You're very welcome.
Yes, good to be part. Thank you.
You're welcome, my friend. Okay. So we are almost there. Serge, you are giving away all your cats out of the bag. No. No, I'm giving you a hard time.
Okay, why is it November 4th?
Huh?
Isn't it November 3rd?
It is November 3rd, but
yeah,
the results will come out probably much later. So
he's trying to confuse us a little bit.
This is going to be a tough issue, this mailing thing, because if you need to wait like 3 more weeks to eventually modify the result, this is an amazing system. But,
okay, let me find your, okay, maybe we should get started then, because it's about 11 o'clock. We'll try to keep it on time, wrap up by noon, and then it is okay to allow questions. So if any of you have questions, you can interrupt, I suppose. But the good thing that that you should probably do is keep yourself muted until you have a question. That way, we don't have any background noise, because that becomes a bit of an issue. So this is our SUNY Buffalo's statistical and nonlinear physics lecture, which I've been hosting since June 1st. This is our COVID, exercise. And the speaker today is Professor Serge Galam from Prof in Paris. And Serge's topic is, will Trump win again in the November 4 election, he says, an answer from a sociophysics model. So let me briefly introduce Serge. Serge is obviously a French physicist. He's a senior scientist emeritus at CNRS and Sciences Po since 2017. His research in physics has focused on disorder and collective phenomena in condensed matter. In addition, at the beginning of the 80s, he started founding the modern field of sociophysics with several seminal contributions. His sociophysics work investigates the dynamics of group decision-making, spreading of minority opinions, rumors, voting outcomes, terrorism, coalition, fragmentation among countries. In the fall of 2016, using the principles of sociophysics, he predicted the election of Donald Trump. He received a doctorate degree in physics and statistical mechanics of dense matter at Pierre and Marie Curie University in Paris in 1975. He obtained a PhD still in physics, multi-critical points in random field magnetic systems at Tel Aviv University in 1981. From 81 to 83, he was a research associate at the City University of New York, City College of City University of New York. He taught at NYU as an assistant professor from 83 to 85, and in 84 was hired at CNRS, where in 99 he became the Directeur de Recherche, senior researcher. From 84 till 2004, he worked in several physics labs of the Pierre and Marie Curie University. In 2004, he joined the Center for Research in Applied Epistemology of the École Polytechnique. In 2013, he joined CEVIPOF, the Center for Political Research of Sciences, Po, and becoming the first physicist ever. I have known Serge since 2012, when he invited me to come to École Polytechnique, and it was really amazing. It was the first super fun conference I've been to, and he has visited me a few times, so that's been really great. With that, I would love to welcome Serge to get started.
Okay, thank you very much for this presentation. As you say, I am French, and you can see it from my accent, but being now not confined, but that means I did not speak English for several months. So, at the beginning, the accent is even tougher and bigger. So maybe at the end of the talk, it will be less. But when I lived in New York, at least people were saying it's very cute. So, maybe it's still, I don't know. So we'll start with this crucial question everyone has. Will Trump win again in the November 4 election? However, before starting, I would like to go back 4 years earlier and remember that 4 years earlier, before the election, everyone, analysts, scholars, pundits, polls were predicting Trump will lose the election for sure. That means there were no doubt. He was even predicted to be losing the Republican nomination, if you do remember. People say, he is like a bubble, a political bubble, and he will just collapse when the voting will start. And all this did not happen. And then it's happened that on my side, I was able to predict his coming victory against all odds. And I have to mention, because I think it's interesting about the way a kind of art science approach to this political event can be developed, that I myself did not believe in this prediction. That means I was like everyone, say, how come this guy can become president? It's not possible. And all the polls, all information was going toward his defeat. But then, so why I can, okay, I am doing this. So, but indeed, I have to be more precise. I did not predict his victory. I predict the winning strategy for him to win. And this is a very different approach. And I think this is what can be more scientific approach. And my prediction was based on both the effect of prejudices in the dynamic of opinion and surprising Trump's capacity to modify the hierarchy of hidden prejudice to have the one which will favor him. And we will see it in the model how this works. And in particular, it was his repeated shocking statement which has put ahead frozen prejudice many people have, and they were against this prejudice, but they did have it, and he was able to awake this prejudice. I have a paper about this in Archive, which was put there in September, and later the paper appeared in the International Journal of Modern Physics B. I should mention, because we will see it's a kind of fun, that also another guy in America did predict Trump victory. It's Alan Lichtman. It's an historian from American University, and he has a kind of binary scheme with 13 keys. And so he predicted also Trump will win. And afterward, he got intensive media in the coverage in the state. I did not, but as we can understand, not many people read the Journal of Modern Physics B, of course. So the big question, what about the coming election? Actually, Lichtman in August 5 gave already his answer. He is predicting, for certain, Trump is going to lose the election. He gave an interview in a video which was published in the New York Times on August 5. So you can see it and you will understand also the technique he is using. Now, what about my model? So we'll have to go up almost to the end of the talk to get the answer. It's important at this stage to say that I am not dealing here with moral concept. I am not dealing with a choice being wrong or right. I am not advocating for one candidate or the other. I am focusing on trying to identify the hidden mechanism which drives the dynamics of opinion between two competing choices, and to use this to anticipate which one of the two will eventually end up above 50% when the vote will take place. So up to a few weeks ago, all media were again predicting Trump will lose, and this time say for sure he will lose. However, we should not forget that during the last 4 years, all these analysts and media have been anticipating Trump will not complete his mandate. And today, here we are with Trump running for a second mandate. So there have been a lot of wishful thinking and not much effort has been devoted to try to understand why and how did Trump win the last election. It's very emblematic if you go to see this interview of Lichman in the New York Times, because the way the journalist put it, I have reproduced it here. You see, they say right now, polls say Joe Biden has a healthy lead over President Trump. But we have been here before, and the polls were frankly wrong. One man, however, was not. The historian Alan Lichman was the lonely forecaster who predicted Mr. Trump's victory. And the conclusion of this, of course, unwritten conclusion is we can now relax. Game is over. Trump is going to lose, as even Lichman now is saying he will lose. But all this is, for me, a taste of déjà vu of 2016, where everyone was saying Trump will lose for sure. So what are my claims here? My claim is that Trump's victory was not an accident, and it resulted from a non-linear dynamics which obey quantitative law, which we still have to discover, but they did exist. And as such, it has been possible to predict his victory. But even if the prediction was not done, the main assumption of sociophysics is saying that in principle, one day we will have this law in hand and we could make such a kind of prediction. So sociophysics, what it's about? Very shortly, because I don't have too much time, it's the use and concept of statistical physics to describe some political behavior. It's important to mention that it does not aim neither at an exact description of the reality, nor to substitute to social science, but to provide an additional, different, and rather counterintuitive vision of the social reality. One main topic of sociophysics has been opinion dynamics now for a few decades, and there are a lot of paper and work on this topic. So Trump 2016 election raised in particular the following question: how come he was able to win making this shocking statement which really infuriated millions of people? And this fury, this indignation was sincere from the people. And then how come he kept on going like all making sense principle of political science, and he turned successful? So the explanation is now we get into the model. And you will see the model is really the way physicists do in modeling a complicated situation. We start from very simple hypotheses and we try to complicate it more and more in order to get some non-trivial result. So I consider two competing choices, A and B. So it was Clinton or Trump, and now it's Trump or Biden. And I separate two different mechanisms. One is an external mechanism which acts directly on every person with more or less effect, but the person cannot react to it. So this is precisely an event like the epidemic of COVID, which is there. That means you just get it. Or it can be the media effect on the people, or some external event, a terrorist attack, or the stock market collapsing. So these are external events, and of course, no science can pretend to predict this kind of phenomena. This is like crystal ball to want to see what will happen out of the blue. However, what we can do is once external events are in effect, and now we are a kind of equilibrium state, we can try to study the internal mechanism of opinion dynamic, which means when people start to discuss among themselves toward voting, for instance, for a president. In the model, I can consider heterogeneous agent, and up to today, I have three kinds of psychology in my model, and I will discuss only two of them today for the coming election. The main one is what I call floaters, which are agents which do have an opinion, they will advocate for it. However, they are susceptible to shift opinion if you give them more convincing argument. So they know why they want to vote for Biden or Trump, they will tell you why. However, you can convince them to change eventually with much stronger argument. Another category of people is what I call inflexible agents. They are like stubborn or committed people. This guy, they have decided for a candidate and they will go and advocate for this candidate, whatever happens, whatever you can tell them. They will not change their mind during the campaign. The third group is a contrarian, which I will not account for them here, is agent and which like to oppose whatever the majority around them thinks. So if everyone will say A, they will say B. If everyone say B, they will say A. So to start the modeling, we consider that all external effects are turned off, and we can know, and this is like the very little of data which I need is to have some poll which will tell me in a given state, okay, now what are the supports for A and B? And then now I can study, starting from this initial support of individual making their own choice, what happens when they start discussing toward an election. How does this happen when people discuss? It's a kind of very complicated situation where people meet together in a very informal way. And I am talking not about organized discussion. I am talking about discussion at dinner, at having a drink, at work, in the public transport, if you are with someone you know. And this is very complicated sociological phenomena process. Say what will make at a point, what kind of argument will make that your mind will decide, okay, now I shift opinion. So as this is very complicated and not known, we make it the physicist way. We say, okay, now let's make it simple. One person, one vote. So it's one person, one argument. And I will use a local majority rule within the discussing group. And of course, this will not apply to stubborn agents as they don't change their mind. So the scheme is I distribute randomly my agent in small group of size 2, 3, 4, 5. Usually it does not go larger than 5 or 6. If you have been, of course, you have been at dinner, for instance, where there are like 8 people, immediately around the table, there are small groups which start talking together by 2, 3, 4 people, and this change, you turn to your right, you turn to your left. So what I do now, I distribute all my agents in small group of a given size. I update every group applying a local majority, which means that within the group, all the floaters there will follow the majority of argument, which means if I have 3A and 1B, the B will shift to A. And at the same time, if I have 3B and 1A, the A will shift to B. So this is at a given update. But I will repeat this update as when the campaign keep on going for months, people will discuss and discuss again the issue with different people and sometimes with the same people again. So once I complete a given update, I redistribute all the agents in the different group and I update again, and so on and so forth. So for every update, I will go from P0, and then as I am modifying locally the opinion of some agent, I will get a new proportion in favor of A, P1, and another one, P2, and so on. And the question, can we predict what is going to be P5, P6, and where it's going to lead? Actually, what we discover is from this approach that we are dealing with a tipping point dynamics, and this is very important, meaning that all dynamics obey a tipping point dynamics in the sense that depending on where you start from your support, if you are below or above the tipping point, the fact to have this informal discussion will for sure increase or decrease your support for the given candidate, I mean. So let's go to equation, and as we do in physics, let's start from the simplest case, which is non-trivial. So I will consider a group of size 3. Now the probability to have a local majority of A in a group of 3 persons randomly selected is either I do have 3A or I have 2A and 1B. And then these are the probability. So this gives me very simply the proportion P1 after one update using my local majority rule, having people distributed in group of size 3. Now, in order to see where this is going to lead, I have to determine and solve the fixed point equation, which is simple here. I can solve it analytically. And I find that I do have 2 attractors at 0 and 1 and a tipping point at 50%, which means that at this stage, we get a very simple model, which gives us that it is the initial majority of aggregated choices which is going to convince the minority to join as much as people are discussing, are exchanging in this small group. So it is not a big deal. However, now we have to think mathematically. When I say I am using a local majority rule, it's nice and it did work totally for size 3. However, if I have now an even side, you can have group of 2 people or 4 people, then majority rule will not apply at a tie. And this is a very interesting element. So what should we consider at a tie for a group of people discussing 2A, 2B? In physics, we would say, okay, this case, we will consider that no update is done and I leave my 2A, 2B and I will reshuffle them to weighting them to be in a different or the same majority. However, here we are not dealing with atoms, we are dealing with humans. And I am now putting my main hypothesis and contribution from psychology, saying that actually at a tie, when there are as many arguments in favor of one candidate as for the other, it is going now to create doubt which one to choose, because there are balance for A or for B. So you don't know which one to choose. And psychologically, you could say, okay, as rationality cannot operate because I have as much argument for one as for the other, so we can say, you know, let's flip a coin because we cannot decide rationally. And here comes the hypothesis that actually when we consciously say we are flipping a coin, okay, let's take whoever, the coin is biased. And it is biased along our unconscious prejudice, which got automatically activated by the issue. So actually, when we say, okay, Trump and Clinton there are good reasons for Trump, good reasons for Clinton, bad reasons for Trump, bad reasons for Clinton. I don't know which one to choose on a rational basis, so I take whoever. And then, depending on your prejudice, you will go for Clinton or Trump. So example, of course, there are many prejudices in different populations, in different culture, but there are a lot of them which are rather universal, unfortunately, like sexism, homophobia, racism, religion, precaution principle, societal vision. Here, I want to stress that a given issue activates a kind of hierarchy with one on top of prejudice. And a priori, it's not clear which one is going to be activated. I will give you an illustration with the same social group, which is dealing at a doubt. Let's say you have a group of people at university, which they have to decide about a reform proposal. You want to change something in your department. Now, if you will have 2A and 2B say, in favor of the change or refusing the change, actually this is documented in psychology that this will have a tip to the status quo, saying as you have no more argument in favor of the change, you prefer to preserve what you know, what you have today. So we keep what was before, and then the two person which was in favor of the reform say, okay, now we reject it. Now you take the same 4 person, but then you have to decide on your group for a new product of high tech or technology, also work for fashion. And then there, 2 to 2 will go for the tip to the novelty. You say, okay, if the new computer is as much improvement that something which it does not have with respect to the old system, you say, okay, let's go for the new one, anyhow. So you see how a given issue activate a different prejudice. So it's a kind of already here interesting to say how a simple mathematical modeling come across a complicated phenomena of this doubting effect, because normally you expect that when you will aggregate more information, the more rational you will get to make up your decision. So here we are grouping more and more people, more and more argument, but sometimes every information, as they are opposed, they neutralize, and then you cannot choose. Now let's see the impact on the dynamic. This is what is interesting. So now to do it, we go to group of size 4. This is the first one. We could have gone to 2, but 4 is more interesting because we also have local majorities. So for group of size 4, again, what is the probability to have a local majority? Either 4A or 4A and 1B. And then now the question, what do we do with the tie, which is 2A to B? Now, let's see, we are going to my hypothesis that a tie will go to the opinion which is in tune.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, yes.
Instead of using 6, why can't, wouldn't it be better if we just put a random variable there?
For what? For the number?
6. You are putting 6 there for the tie contribution.
No. So, yeah, of course.
If 2 equals 6.
No. Yes. You can take whatever size you want. My point here, I first want to study how it works, and then to solve everything analytically. So I study group of size 3, now group of size 4. Also later in the talk, I will stay in group of size 4. After, for a more realistic, you can take a combination of group. But the equation, you have to write them for every size and then combine the various proportion of size. So it gives much more complicated equation, but which are not difficult to solve numerically, but not, that means if you go to 6, you have a polynomial of degree 6, you cannot solve it analytically. Here I can do
excuse me, in the tie contribution, you are assuming that a person will have a clear idea. But actually, a person can be in two minds and he can contribute to both the sides.
What? Please repeat again.
A person can be in two minds and may support both the sides. How do you account for that kind of person?
No, for the moment, I am considering every person as a given choice and make a choice and eventually change a choice. I am not considering, it's also possible, I did some extension, you can have 3 choices, you can have someone which don't know, does not know, but I want to make it simple to see what is the effect of this element. So this is why I keep it here with 4 first, and at a tie, it go toward all the 4 go toward one direction. I will weaken this assumption later, not everyone going to A or to B, you will see. So here you see that when I put the contribution of the tie to, let's say, opinion B, now this modified a lot the tipping point location because it go down to 23 for A and it go up to 77 for B. So you see that this tie contribution has a drastic effect on the dynamics that we are going to have. And here is a picture. Now, for the opinion which is in tune with the activated prejudice, it is enough to start with a support higher than 23% to grow and pass 50%. At the opposite, the opinion which is in dissonance with the prejudice activated by the issue, even if it starts as high as 75%, it will go down and end up below 50%. So this is a very strong effect which you don't notice it as it go like very smoothly and naturally, and all these groups say, okay, we pick up one or the other, no matter. Now I come to what I was mentioning. I can indeed put heterogeneity of prejudice here and saying, okay, at a tie 2A to B, not everyone shares the same, does have the same activated prejudice. So actually I can put a probability K to go for A or 1 minus K to go for B. And this can introduce a balance. So you will have some area where it will go, the prejudice, the leading prejudice are more toward A and some other area where it will be more toward B. We can still solve it analytically, and I think this is nice to be able to follow precisely what is going on. And this is a tipping point expression here. And we have the representation as function of K, which we expect when K is equal to 0, we have the higher value, which is for the tipping point 77. And then the stronger you benefit from the prejudice, then the value of the tipping point go down to 23, which is the lowest value when it's 1. So indeed, the model shows that collective belief and prejudice take over initial individual choice. And we can see here how strong it is. I will start from a minority of 25%, and this gives me the effect of the prejudice. I start with all prejudice against this opinion, which has 25%, and I will increase K toward 1 and see how it works. This is from 25. After 2 cycles, 3, 4 cycles, you see that it goes to 0. Now, you see, even when I have now 80% of the people at a time which favor this opinion of 25, it still is going to 0. So you will not see anything happening. But then, let's see, you have all of a sudden, when you move from 0.9 to 1, you jump, and then you have this 25%, which become a huge majority. So most of the time, you never reach the end, of course, because this takes time. 1 cycle in my discussion, of course, does not correspond to a real 1 discussion. It's a kind of average over time, over different discussions. So usually, depending on the intensity of discussion, one cycle will be like 1 week or 2 weeks, or you have to adapt given this intensity.
A question, Professor Galam?
Yes.
The chart you showed, is that what is the distribution of A1 through A6? In other words, the proportion of groups of different sizes from 1 through 6? Or 2 through
No. Here, all the groups are always 4.
Oh, it's always 4. This is not for distribution. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So now, the result at this moment is to see, as I say, this is a kind of rather depressing result, in the sense that what we found that the instrumental question is to identify which prejudice will be activated to raise the collective local doubt within a discussing group. And actually, many prejudices are frozen in our consciousness. We are not aware of them. And this is come the Trump illustration of 4 years ago campaign. At the beginning, when I was in France, before I had the chance to go to the States, my analysis of the prejudice which will be activated between Trump and Clinton was about he is unfit for US commander-in-chief. So in case of a doubt, this will go toward Clinton. He has no political knowledge for foreign affairs, so this will activate a choice for Clinton. Most of them were, he does not fit to the job. So most of the prejudice which I identified were in favor of Clinton. So actually my conclusion at this time was he will lose the election. And I was thinking like everyone else, because for Trump with my modeling, he has like a K equals 0. So even if he was getting at the beginning in some poll, in some state, a high support because he was anti-system, he was different, my model here was showing the more people will discuss, the more he will lose support and he will end up losing the election. However, I had a chance to be in March in the state, and then I realized how Trump was playing along my model. Of course, he does not know my model, but me, I interpret it this way, along a path I did not envision before. For me, you cannot act on the prejudice. They are there, given. So you can identify them, you can try to play with them, but you cannot decide which one are going to be there. And actually, Trump found a way to innovate it with my model to activate some prejudice that were frozen in many of us. So here is a mechanism I am evoking, saying that indeed when Trump's shocking statements were infuriating people, and then these people say, let's discuss, we cannot vote for such a guy. Look, he make a racist statement here, he make a sexist statement here. And then you'll go to people which you know and say, no, vote for him, let's vote for Clinton. But at the same time, and here this is my hypothesis, this emotional reaction was unfreezing some deep locked prejudice, which means that indeed many of us do have some racist and sexist prejudice inside our brain. And then our experience in life, our education later as an adult, has given us the possibility to lock down this, say, no, I don't have to decide according to a racist position. I don't have to decide about the sexist if it's a man or a woman. I have to decide on fact, on rationality. So we can put this prejudice back in our mind. But my point that we cannot erase them. And then Trump, by his shocking statement, was activate them. And our reaction was to be against, but then to open this prejudice, which means that when we got at a tie, being against him, but at a tie say, okay, Trump and Clinton for other reason, we had the balance of argument, and then people will decide for Trump. However, what is important to see why this argument, he did not win, of course, in all states. So it did not work like on a systematic view. Because when he was making a shocking statement, he was losing support first. This loss of support was making these people turning to Clinton, which first was planning to vote for him. But they got now this prejudice activated. And in the discussion, they will turn back to Trump due to the tie effect. However, as we are dealing with a tipping point dynamics, when you have the drop in support, in order to have the support to increase again once the prejudice are changed, you need still to be above the tipping point. And even if the tipping point now is low, you still have to be above it, which means that in order to stay above, before the activated prejudice start to play, you need to have enough people which do have this racist position or this sexist position without problem. That means, so they will stay supporting Trump despite his statement. And this is important, is now the balance between this core minority of racist and sexist people with the one which get out of it but have it in their unconscious. And I will show you 2 examples how it works. Here is just an illustration to see how with the same support of 24%, if you benefit or not from as a prejudice, you will go up and spread, or you will go down and disappear. Now, this is the first picture I was mentioning. Here we start Trump having a strong support. However, the prejudice are acting against him, the one I mentioned before, the natural one we think to, and then he will decrease, lose support, and Clinton will rise support. Then he makes a shocking statement. Then there is a drop in support. And then now, here I have K equal to 0, but now here, K now is 1. And people will start discussing tie effect, and then it will go up, and again be above 50% and stay there. This is an illustration where indeed here I have a combination of size, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and with different weight. And I start from 65% support, then K is equal to 0 for this. So K will play for 2, for 4, and 6, not for 1, 3, 5. Then he go down at this point to 16 for support. However, as now before the tipping point was very high at 0.837, he went down now with changing K to this lower value of 663, which is just below the support he got. So this is why he can increase again. However, here now, it's the same picture, but the drop took him below the tipping point, and then he will start losing, even if now K is equal to 1. So this is my explanation of all the states where he did lose, and this is where he did win. So to be respectable and presidential would have led Trump to lose the election according to the model. And paradoxically, at the end of the campaign, if you remember, there have been a very strong media highlight against some Trump sexist statement on the tape. And according to the model, actually, instead of going against him, this has turned it to his benefit. Now we come to today's situation. What about this election? Will the same frozen prejudice effect be again instrumental? And the answer clearly is no. Why? Because after 4 years of Trump president, people now even don't pay attention to his shocking statement. That means people don't get furious, indignant, because, you know, what do you expect? So there is no more emotion which can defreeze this prejudice. So this does not work any longer. So does it mean he's losing the election now as he does not benefit of it? The answer again is no. Because there is now a new prejudice effect which I identified, which is going to be very active in the campaign, which is fear. And what is interesting is that this time, this prejudice is activated by both candidates. Biden is saying that if Trump stays for another 4 years, America will be destroyed for all its values. And Trump say if Biden will be elected, it will be chaos and communism or socialism. So everyone now is activating fear, but this fear, which one is going to be the stronger? This depends on a given person, on given population. Some will be more scared of having a socialism state in the state, even if it is not true that you will make a socialist state, but this is like in the prejudice effect. And other people say Trump will destroy totally America. So here we have a competition of respective fear. Fear of Trump or fear of Biden. In addition, Trump is being very creative, at least with my model, because now he's putting another new element in the dynamics, is this inflexible or committed or stubborn people. And indeed, like for the fear, this is available on both sides. During his 4 years presidency, Trump has polarized the American voter at a rather high level. And today you will have millions of voters which are currently blind Trump supporters. Whatever he does, it's Trump. And you also have blind anti-Trump supporters. Whatever he does, no, they don't want it. So this inflexible I do have in my model. And then now I want to study what is the effect of this inflexible on the dynamics. So I remind you, and within my model, again, simplest approach, an inflexible does take part in the local making of the majority, but he has no stronger argument as the other. He also has one argument as everyone else. So he contributes with one argument to the local majority, but in case the local majority go against his choice, it will not modify his choice. So he will not follow the local majority. So let's see what happened for group of size 3 in order to first study the phenomena. So now I have no prejudice effect because this is an odd size group. So I will note little a, the proportion of A inflexible, little b, proportion of B inflexible, and then for a support P0 for A, I will have P0 minus A floater, and 1 minus P0 minus B floater. So these are some limit constraints of A and B. So I will introduce this X, so I will write A equal. Actually, no, I will do it the other way in the following. B equal A plus X. And then when X is positive, I have more A. And when X is negative, I have less A inflexible, sorry. Okay, no, okay, it's a good written this way. Yeah. A is well, B plus X. So now I will have as a variable A and X. So here is the equation for the update. When I have only size 3, no inflexible, this is the equation we started with. Now this is a new update equation for one update in group of size 3, which I can rewrite here with B and X. So Now it's a little more complicated to solve this cubic equation. And actually, we cannot solve it analytically for any case. However, I will study it step by step. First case, let's see what happens when I have one-sided inflexible. So B equal to 0 and A equal X. So only one opinion as inflexible, while the other has only floaters. Solving the equation is simpler, it's here. And then I got here the new fixed point of my equation. And I still have an attractor at 1 for A. But now, instead of 0 for the B side, I had this value because as I do have X inflexible on side A, opinion A will not disappear if I keep on my cycle as before. And then we see that the tipping point, this is the most important element, has moved from, as we could expect, from 50%. So this is an illustration where I have a proportion less, this is around 10% of inflexible for A, no inflexible for B. And then instead of this picture here, when I do iteration, you see how I go down below 50% and I will go up above. Now I got this graph here. And you see that this gives me an advantage for A because now in order to reach above 50%, it does not have to start above 50%. It can start at a value which is still high, not negligible, but less than 50%. However, there is an unexpected phenomena which I did not thought about it beforehand, that indeed there is a critical value xc for the proportion of inflexible at which the attractor B coalesce with the tipping point. And I can calculate this value xc here, which is the value here. It's around 17%, but we do have an analytic formula. And then what is amazing that when x is larger than xc, which means when the proportion of inflexible is larger than this value, this is what I got. You see, instead of this element where the tipping point was below 50%, but it did exist, if opinion B will start above the complementary of this, which means around here, it will win. But now, whatever are the initial conditions, A will win. B cannot win, even if it starts from 83%, because we got now a one attractor dynamics, which is amazing, just by having more than 18% of stubborn people on side A. Here are illustration how it works. I have an initial support of 20%, no inflexible for B, and we see what the effect when I go to 0 inflexible for A, 5%, 15%, 18%, 20%. You see that not much up and not much, and then at 20%, this is above the 17, I go up and I will pass the bar of 50%. Now let's see symmetrical case, two sides inflexible but the same value. So A equal B and X equal to 0, we can also calculate analytically the expression for attractor and tipping point. And this is a picture we have, which of course is symmetrical. Now the balance stay democratic because the tipping point stay at 50% when it's symmetric. However, the two attractors move toward the tipping point. And again, there is a kind of unexpected effect that when I go above 25% on inflexible, actually the two attractors coalesce at the tipping point, which now become the single attractor again of the dynamics. And this is creates the effect of Young election, because now whatever are my initial conditions, I will end up with 50-50, equality for both candidates. Okay, and now what we want is the most common and important thing, that we have asymmetric two-side inflexible. So it's not the same proportion on each side. So this is a complicated cubic equation, and at least I was not able to solve it analytically to get simple expression for the different fixed point. So I do it numerically, and this is an illustration in which I take 17% inflexible for A and 15% inflexible for B. So I have a difference of 2% more inflexible for A. And I got my two attractors now are at 22%, 82, and the tipping point at 47. However, here too, the coalescence phenomena of the tipping point with an attractor is still occurring. And now it can occur either for A or B. And indeed, I can identify two critical proportions at the advantage of A or at the advantage of B, in which I will again end up with one attractor dynamics. So when X is between these two critical values, I still have the picture of a tipping point and two attractors. So every opinion may be winning depending on its initial condition with respect to the tipping point. However, when I am above or below, above A will win always, and below the second one, A will lose always, whatever you do. This is an illustration here. So this is with a 2% difference. And indeed, you see that the tipping point has moved down below here. So a 2% difference in X, yet it's a drastic break in the democratic balance, because now you need to be above 47%. So it gives you a kind of 6% advantage with respect to B, where should be your initial condition in order to pass the bar of 50%. Yeah, second scenario, when X, I took the case of A, advantage of inflexible, so we still have this breakdown, and you see that now A will win whatever is started where. Of course, its initial support will be higher than the number of inflexible it has on its side. However, what we can see that here it will go, it's a very low effect when I will have my iteration to move along. So I need a lot of update here to go up toward the 50% and toward the attractor. Let me show you some illustration, which kind of also very surprising and depressing.
Okay, question again?
Yes.
Just a clarification. In the last illustration you showed us with B of 0.02 and the numbers here, in this one, are you working with a fixed group size R, or do you have a distribution of the AIs?
No, this is a fixed size of 3 people.
So the 3 you showed at the very beginning. Okay.
Yes.
That 3 you showed. Okay, thank you.
Okay. So this is also for size 3. So first case, I have no only floater, no stubborn people. So as we remember, then it's a nice tipping point at 50%. The initial majority, even very little one, will move to increase the support. Now let's see the situation in which I have a minority of support for A of 30%. Among these 30%, 5% are inflexible. People are discussing group of size 3 again, and this will go down and not totally to 0 due to this 5%. Actually, after 7 cycles, it reached the attractor, which is at 5.3. And another case, now I still have 30% of support for A, but now within this 30%, I have increased my stubborn people from 5% to 18%. And this is now the dynamics I get. So it does not go down as we had before, but it increased just a little bit. And you see, we do have 12 cycles, which is quite already some substantial number. So a priori, you say, okay, this does not change a lot. However, when I will add 7 more cycles, this is what we got. All of a sudden, this kind of very stable element, now you see how this is going to all of a sudden jump and move across the 50% frontier. So 7 more cycles here will be enough, like within the model, to reach 100%. As I say, usually the vote will occur either here or here. So if there is not enough cycle to reach this frontier, of course, then A will still be losing. So A has an advantage of having a lot of discussion among people. So generating a lot of group and discussing everywhere.
So Serge, about 5 minutes or so?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, what I'm saying is that let's finish up in about 5 minutes or so, you think?
What? Finish in 5 minutes? Oh, wow. No, I did not get it. Okay, so let me show you.
Because we are almost near noon. I mean, we can go a few minutes over, but.
Okay, so I did not see the time. So let me first finish just this. These are kind of identical cases. I have support of 17 inflexible or 18 inflexible. It's no longer 30%. It's only inflexible, but one group has 17 and the other 18. You see that, okay, going 20 cycle, only a small difference appear. Now, again, when I go along repeating cycle, you see that now 1% difference has created a huge evolution among these 2 cases. This one will be higher supportive of A, not this one. Okay, so what is important that everyone has his own stubborn agent, and what is going to matter is the difference. And this will vary, of course, from one state to another when we now come back to the question of Biden versus Trump. This allows us to envision some novel strategies which are disturbing, but here they are, that in order to win the majority, the candidate should not try to convince a maximum of floaters. They have to produce stubbornness on their own side and to try to weaken the argument of stubbornness on the other side, but this is more difficult, and then just to have inflexible randomly discussing with everyone else. And then we found that a tiny excess of inflexible may shift majority to minority and so on. So now, for the coming election, I have to combine both effects of prejudice effect and stubborn effect. So for the stubborn effect, it's the difference between support of stubbornness, A and B. And for the prejudice and the one about fear, it's the difference from 50%, which will be the balanced one. If the difference decay is positive, it's favor A. If it's negative, it's favor B. If X is positive, it's favor A. If X is negative, it's favor B. And now, little advantage in either one of them will be very important. Here are some illustration where I have a 20% of stubborn for A, and then actually B has a little less, and no, B has more, has 10% more, so it will have 30% of stubborn, while A benefit from the prejudice at 60% instead of 50. So the tipping point, the attractor is at 33, A will lose. But you see now, if we go to this case, which is not so different from the other one, now the stubbornness support is the same for A and B at 35%, and then there is a little advantage for prejudice for A of 10%. And then now the attractor is at 54, so A will win. Last two, no, I have two more, I think. 35, and now an increase of 5% of stubbornness for A, which means 40% of A stubborn against 35 for B, but prejudice for A is only at 40%. Yet A will win because the attractor is at 51, very narrow. Other interesting case, I have an advantage of only 1% of A stubbornness, 36, while B will have 35. However, the prejudice is 4% less for A. The attractor is exactly at 50, so we'll have an Eng election here. Okay, what is important now is that these are millions of voters which are, as I say, currently blind Trump supporter, blind anti-Trump supporter, and blind Biden supporter. What is very important to notice here that blind anti-Trump supporters are not automatically blind Biden supporter. They overlap a lot, but this is going to be a main issue because, as we saw, a few percent difference will make a big difference. So for the moment, I have no access, of course, for this value, but my rough guess is that Trump has advantage in enough state, in particular the swing state, and then he has been motivated, his troop going on the ground more at the moment than Biden, so he will have more inflexible on his side in the state where he goes. And also, okay, so the situation is very unstable with the COVID and everything. So here is my statement that up to today, my estimate is Trump will win again this election in November 4. So it's a drastic, conclusion. However, this is very important to notice that while for last election, Trump found a martingale to win, which could not be applied by Clinton. So he had this prejudice, unfrozen thing that Clinton could not do. However, this time, I have the two effects. Every candidate can play with it. Fear, everyone can increase the fear for the other candidate, and everyone can try to increase his stubbornness on his side. So it's more somehow open than the first one. There will be also very important element, but I cannot discuss it now. So about unavowed abstention for Biden and hidden voter for Trump. So these are two elements going in favor of Trump the day of the election. So not in the poll, but just at the voting day. And I must emphasize that my prediction is not here about taking risk or becoming a guru. It's important to say that it's about trying to develop a hard science approach model. So if the prediction is successful today, it will not mean the model is proved. It just means that we are on the right track to understand this phenomena. At the contrary, if the prediction turns wrong, it will not mean the model has to be thrown away, but I have missed some point which must be identified and add to the model. The issues at stake are huge for our future, and indeed it is not a work in progress, it is a field in progress. So, okay, I pass for the reference. I go just for this, my book on sociophysics, which is a nice, funny, and very, of course, I am not going to say that it's not interesting, but it's an interesting book. And this is my last slide, that discovering the law which govern our collective behavior become a decisive key in today's world of connected people to avoid being trapped in our unconscious archaic biases. And I thank you for listening.
Let's unmute and applaud because otherwise, thank you, Serge.
Okay.
Yes, I thought this was a fantastic talk, and I'm sure our listeners would concur. Let's open up the field to some questions. I think Sriram had some questions. So,
yeah, hi, Sriram Ramaswamy from Bangalore. I was wondering, don't you think in addition to Trump unlocking prejudices in his in his favor, the statement by Hillary Clinton that those who wouldn't vote for her are a basket of deplorables was a case of her unlocking prejudices in favor of Trump?
Of course. That means I just have mentioned the main one, which was racism and sexism, but there are a lot, and also from Clinton's side, few attitude, and also there were this male, the main male problem which has gone against her about her seriousness, So there, the whole point is here. You see that although I do have equation, for the moment there are equations defining trend and trying to see what is leading, but it's not exhaustive, of course. So I agree with you.
I had another question. So just if you don't mind, just a short question.
Yeah.
Rather than testing your model only by final outcomes, are there ways of going back and looking at data from opinion polls and so forth and seeing if the type of opinion formation dynamics that you talk about is observed? Have you done that?
I missed some point. You asked me if I did something to check how it works with poll, you mean? So no.
Yeah, I'm just saying, for example, if one wants to test your approach more exhaustively, it would be nice to have real data accumulated over the course of an election or over the course, so data on the opinion formation dynamics itself. Have you been doing that kind of thing, or is it feasible?
No, I did not. But this, of course, will be interesting to pick up, even to start. That means few states where Trump won and other where Clinton won, and see how. But the difficulty is that as the polls were not correct, so it's difficult to use them to check the model, because here really we are saying that the polls are not getting the right picture due to this effect, which actually will happen very shortly before the election. So the point is, as I saw for one picture with 17 and 80%, so it's almost the same, and then go up. For instance, there have been an event, if you remember, in Ukraine, one actor has been elected president not long ago, and this was like totally crazy to imagine. But then the polls were able to see the fact that he was getting majority, because the change of majority occurred long before the vote. But in the case of Trump Clinton, and I think this is going to happen again in this one, we will have an intensification of discussion few days before, and this will make the big change. So this is why poll, even if we could say we'll have poll which do get the right picture, that means unless to do it 2 days before and everywhere, and so it's difficult due to this effect of increasing group discussion before the voting day.
Okay, thank you.
I want to say I really enjoyed Professor Ramaswamy's comment about the tracking from poll to poll. And I would like to add something to what Professor Galam pointed out, which is that these things you're looking at essentially a state by state kind of thing, development, for instance, starting with Trump's winning the campaign, winning each state turn by turn. So you can have some amount of homogeneity P0 from state. There's huge variation between states. So you have these small groups of 6 people or 5 or 3 people, or presumably sitting in the same state having a discussion. And the problem is, if you try to track your method with polls, national polls involve a lot of people. The state by state polls involve relatively small numbers of people. And so now you do a simple sample in a poll result, you take a simple square root of PQ over N kind of thing. And the error rate at even a sample size of 1,000, that's a error rate of 0.015 standard deviation. And now as over time, your P0 goes to P1 to P2 with each cycle. It's very hard to pick up that kind of increase because when you take into account the error rate associated with the poll. So in other words, the sample number that you get is far enough away from the true proportion supporting a candidate that it's very hard to identify that if the numbers are increasing from cycle to cycle in the way that the local majority rule predicts. Nothing, but I'm saying, I think Professor Ramaswamy's point was a very interesting one, just saying in practice, it would be quite hard to implement that unless you go from like stage 1 to stage 7 or something. You take 6 jumps and say P 0.15 goes up to 0.25 or something, then that difference can be detected because it'll overcome the standard error rate. And remember, keep in mind, this is, again, state by state poll rather than national poll, because the national numbers vary a lot with, Washington, D.C. is hugely Democratic versus a Republican state, one of the Dakotas, for instance, or whatever. So within a state, and the sample size you're getting are small enough that it's very hard to identify the true population change from those samples. But I thought that was a very interesting point, this the stage by stage tracking. This was my thought. I do Bayesian statistics primarily, though I do some non-Bayesian statistics too. And what occurred to me was, with your cycles, you've got your local majority rule, and that's just a model I agreed. Of course, we don't predict, one, it's a reasonable model, fine. However, when you do a cycle by cycle change, and you have what you said in the K change, okay, what's the effect of the K and so on. So I'm doing the simpler model, not even getting into inflexibles and Contrarian, just a simpler 2016 model, which itself is quite very interesting and impressive, but I don't, please apologize. I'm saying simpler by comparison to the new model. Not simple, but simpler, easier to understand. Even in that model, you have the following thing. So I'm saying when you have a cycle, and someone brought up the comment of the basket of deplorables and so on. In 2016, one of the big things was the Comey surprise. A few days before the election, he made an announcement to Congress saying he had to bring it out that the investigation email is ongoing. So now your cycles, as you said, you didn't define exactly what causes cycles. Obvious events are debates. People have intense discussion after a presidential debate, after a vice presidential debate, after a big news, and so on and so forth. The thing I'm thinking about is each of those big news tends to affect your PJ at the time state J. It's not just that PJ goes to PJ plus 1 by debates among the small groups, but the surprise can be for positive and negative. Obviously, the Comey surprise was a negative one. Now, how to quantify that, that's quite hard. Bayesian statistician will use prior probabilities, but not successfully. So as a possible extension would be to try to say positive or negative surprises. The events that trigger the result also tend to, it's not just going from the current PJ, but PJ plus or minus some delta based on input. Comey, we can all agree that that would increase Trump's chance. So when the interview about the bus where he made the comments about women, that you would think would be against him. Though of course you have the things you mentioned, the shocking statements. But I guess I'm saying rather than a static PJ between PJ, there's also a slight change going on there, which the Bayesian statistician would try to modify using a prior. That's a possible extension that I want to point out.
No, I agree. And actually, maybe it was not clear, but when you have an external, this is what I call external event. So what you are mentioning on the news, so then indeed you get then a kind of rescaling of the P. And then when I say it's the same thing, when he make his shocking statement, and then I have a drop, if you remember the graph. Yes. So then you modified externally the respective P, and then you start again people discussing and see how it works. So you can indeed, if one would like to take a given state and see the evolution, if one could have, but this, as you mentioned, is very difficult, and they are not interested, they have not been interested for the moment to have much more precise polls on a given specific state. But to see, for instance, how after each shocking statement, how he rescales the proportion and how it starts to grow up or to go down. But this is something, of course, that is in the model. What I am doing is giving some initial condition how it evolved. Then something happened externally, so you can rescale, take this into account, and then again it will go up or down, depending each time if you are above or below the tipping point, and also depending if this external event has modified the position of the tipping point, which he was able to do in the last election.
Yeah, thanks for that clarification, because I liked what you said, that he followed your model, not knowingly, followed your model along a path you'd never thought, that by making a shocking statement, the tipping point jumped to where it was, for example, he gave some examples where it was higher than the support, even though low, was higher than the tipping point, and so there was slow increase.
Exactly, yes. This was surprising and very interesting to understand the phenomena.
Quick question about prejudice.
Go ahead. Yeah. Somebody has the microphone on. Can you please give it a minute? Sorry about that.
Okay, bye.
Please keep your microphones on mute if you are not speaking, please.
I have a quick question about prejudice. Hello?
Yes, please.
Yes.
Yeah, at the beginning you mentioned the opinions, then we switched to the prejudice in description of the model, and prejudices, I understand, are very important because they somehow qualitatively and quantitatively enter in the model. So what do you call, what is your definition of prejudice, how it differs from the opinion?
Okay, so an opinion is a choice you are making given some series of information. A prejudice is an a priori which you do have independently of having to make a choice. So if you are sexist, you have an a priori view where you think men are superior to women.
Isn't this an opinion?
You don't have to make any choice about it. But okay. And the point is that if, let's take this example of sexism, because there is a nice illustration saying, let's say you are at a committee and you have to hire a new colleague, and then you end up with two candidates, a male and a female, which have, for different reasons, two files which you cannot decide which one is better. So you got a tie. And then the point is, I think, I never have been in such a situation, but I think that 20 years ago, the committee, which were indeed, it was mainly male people, would say, okay, of course, we take the men without discussing. Today, you cannot say that. And not only you cannot, but I think the people would say, I don't want to decide which colleague we are going to have, depending on a male or female. I want to have the better one. However, if they are equivalent, to say, okay, let's pick up by chance anyone. Now, if everything is quiet in today's situation, I think the prejudice will go towards the female, because you say, you want to have more female in the department. There are not enough women. But the point here is that for some reason, someone will make a sexist statement and everyone will get furious, say you cannot say this and that and that. And then you go back to this balance thing. And then now your emotion against what was said, but you say, okay, we pick up randomly and then you will choose the male. So it's a kind of archetype situation, of course. It's more complicated than that.
Okay, thank you.
So in some sense, you are saying, if I understand correctly, Serge, that prejudice moves on a longer time scale,
yes,
perhaps,
yes.
And it's more rigid than opinion, which can be more noisy.
Yeah, you're right. It's another important element that you got your prejudice through your growing education and after from your life. But what you can decide is to freeze a given prejudice and not be led by it to make your choice. But you cannot decide to take it out of you, or you cannot decide to take it in it. Yeah. So it's an important element, yes.
Any further questions? Otherwise, we'll close the session.
Shurojit and Professor Galam, there's another thought I had, but it's a bit complicated to explain. So what I think I'll do is I'll talk to Shurojit and or email both of you with the thoughts I have about a possible way of possible extension of something you're doing, which I found very interesting, but has to do with heterogeneity, which has a decision we think about quite a bit. But anyway, let me know.
Yeah, you can just email me and I can connect you to Serge and we can have a three-way.
Sure. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. This will be good.
That'll be great. Yeah.
Yeah, it will be nice.
Yeah. Yeah, I have to leave. Take care of. Okay, since we're ending, that's good. To leave before 1 o'clock and take care of something. So.
Thanks for joining. Good seeing you. Yeah. Anybody else? Any questions or should we close? We are all very friendly people, so you can ask questions. All right. Hearing none. I think it's late in India. Many are from India. It's late in China. So
in France is like 2 more hours for dinner, so it's a good time.
Yeah, you're in good shape. But since there are no further questions, please unmute yourself now and let's give Serge a grand applause. And thank you so much for such a wonderful talk.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, and we'll post it on YouTube. So you'll be getting a lot of fan mail, I hope. All right, my friend. Take care and thank you for joining.
Thank you all for your interest. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.